Welcome. Thank you for joining us so much. Welcome to our session, the Media Plan of the Future, how creativity, innovation, attention, and responsible planning might be driving our decision-making in the next 10 years in media. My name is Natalie Fisher-Brown. I'm delighted to lead the team at WeTransfer in the UK. It's a great pleasure for me to run this business. It brings together all the things I've loved about ad tech and what I think is the most beautiful ad format on the internet. My one plug of the day. So we work with clients and agencies to really bring to life clients from the luxury sector, alcohol, automotive, fashion space, in a really meaningful way, driving real business outcomes. And a lot of that work is with Dentsu, one of our great partners. So I'm delighted today to be joined by the wonderful Jean-Guillaume, JG. So thank you so much for joining me today. So a little introduction. JG is the head of innovation, global head of innovation at iProspect, where he leads the pioneering FUTURElab, focusing on cutting-edge media innovations that propel brand growth. He's successfully partnered with industry giants such as Google, Burberry, Hendrix, Ferrero, Zalando, and IKEA. Previous roles at Ubisoft, Groupe Le Figaro in Paris, and work with Essence and Dentsu in London give you a huge amount of experience in driving real leadership and change through digital strategy. So who better to talk to us today about the future of the media plan? So JG and I haven't worked together for a huge amount of time, but we've had lots of conversations in the space, and those conversations really led to the kind of thought behind today's conversation. So we want to try to take us a little bit of a mirror into the future. Let's look into our disco ball, if we like, of what might happen. We also have just seen the release of Dentsu's Pace of Growth 2024 Media Trends Report, which I'd like to dig into a little bit, because I think it has some really interesting points for us to think about. For me, predictably, Gen AI really takes the stage, of course. Wouldn't be a conference session without talking about Gen AI. But also there was a real strong acknowledgement of change in the industry. We're faced with huge message saturation. How are we going to address this? And what does this mean for economic growth? How are we all going to make money when there's so much saturation? So let's spend the next 15 minutes or so talking about your work at FUTURElab. As for your thoughts in that space. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Natalie. So, yeah, I guess figuring out the trends that matter for our brands is a question I get asked a lot, and I think that the key is to try and figure out beyond the noise and the buzz, and we're all reading the same headlines and we all get bored of the word AI, what are the things that are generally going to make a difference for our brands, and that we as marketers can really help our brands navigate. So there's two big ones I can see. I think the first one for me is we're really much at the age of kind of culture-first brands. We can see, if you look at Barbie's success recently, last year, entertainment, IP is having a big moment, but where I think it gets a lot more interesting is storytelling is evolving. We're very much in the platform age where culture, conversation, commerce are all coming together, that convergent piece where really, really inspiring stories are literally just a share away from a conversation, a click away from a sale. And it means you have retail partners who are now building media businesses, and you have entertainment partners who are opening new advertising space who are now clickable. So I think brands are probably not making the most of that space, and the brands who do are probably going to really lean and do a good job in culture. If you fast forward in the future a little bit, we know more and more of the biggest cities in the world are going to come from APAC or Africa. So culture is definitely moving from west to east in terms of center of gravity. And the other big thing, which I think is fascinating for me from a culture perspective, is I think we're getting to the place where we want to feel more. You know, we work in advertising to help create that moment of connection. And more of the feeling more, the experiences we want can be augmented. I don't know if anyone's been to the Van Gogh exhibition literally around the corner last year, but it was a great moment where a couple of things happened. They didn't have a single piece of original Van Gogh painting, so very scalable, great. But it was for me, one of the better exhibitions because you had fun, immersive spaces, you had VR, very playful, very made for the visual age. And I think brands will want those kind of augmented spaces. A couple of brands are doing a really good job of that for me are people like Balenciaga and their Fortnite partnership a couple of years back where they showed how off and gaming world can kind of balance each other out. And more recently, one of our partners, Cronenbourg Blanc, is really good at rethinking the beer category and elevating culture. So I know they're speaking tomorrow, so have a listen to that one. So that's the first one. And then I said I wasn't going to talk about AI, but I'm going to lie a little bit.
Little touch.
Little touch. The second big one for me is what I call the age of augmented marketing. And I think our responsibility as media partners is to make sure people lean into that, and what does it mean for current opportunities? It means beyond the headlines, the way we interact with machine is radically changing. It's radically changing in the last 12 months. If you look at search as an example, we're moving from keyword to conversational. Microsoft, Google are actually really radically changing their businesses around it. So it means how your brands are going to get discovered is going to change. And the second thing I'm seeing as an agency person, I guess, is when you're starting to tap into embedded AI, it's delivering a lot more results. So the bigger question for brands is how do you figure out the data you have and the right use cases to use those models, those smart models, to get smarter insights, more predictive, reach people at scale. And you want to do that in a really responsible way. So just to wrap up that big old question, I think the brands are doing that well. There are people like Zalando who a couple of months ago launched a ChatGPT assistant on their e-commerce fashion platform to really help curate in a conversational way, figure out which shoes will match which t-shirt, and really help you kind of through that journey, a bit like you would in a real store. So brands who do that are doing really well, and I think we know consumers are going to want brands to be really predictive. If you haven't got that sorted, in a couple of years' time, you'll probably be in a difficult spot.
Love that. So the user at the center, thinking before we actually have the thought ourselves.
Yeah.
Okay, love that.
Slightly scary, but yes.
Slightly scary. Moving on to potentially more scary matters, the digital advertising economy. So where do you think we are right now and potentially where we might kind of look to? So I think we're feeling this real more and more ads, greater diversity. Is more better? Are we saturated? How are we going to make money? JJ, what's the answer?
Yes to everything. No, definitely. I guess we're saying, so Dentsu released recently a kind of mid-year ad spend report, and $35 billion more this year in ad spend, mainly driven by the Olympics and the US elections coming up. But the growth, where that growth is I think really interesting. It's coming mainly from digital display, retail media, social, but we're also seeing a lot more inventory opening up. Like I talked about the platforms, your Netflix, your Amazon Prime, kind of leaning into more and more ad spaces, gaming. So in a way, there's more opportunities than ever to connect. But as you said, that also means more noise. So I think everyone here is familiar with clutter. 80% of display potentially is not seen. That's a big problem for advertising. So to your point, if there are more opportunities, the clutter problem is going to get bigger. So from a planning perspective, one of the big things we're really focusing on is attention. Attention, how do you effectively plan for attention? How do you buy against it? What are the partnerships with people like Lumen to really, model attention planning, leaning with, partners who are also leaning into that problematic, and essentially getting to the space where we figure out actually the quality spaces matter, because you have the ability to measure the attention, which gives you what you want in terms of outcome, but also the spaces to tell stories that cut through. So this is why, we've done a lot of work with you guys to try and crack that attention piece, which is really important.
Yeah, so maybe also the planning stage and the measurement afterwards become more and more important over the next few years. Okay, so Global Head of Innovation, what does innovation mean to you? What do you kind of hope to see in the future? If you could have your own vision of that, what would you really like to see?
I think it's the metaverse. No, it's not. It's not. It's a joke. It's a joke. Moving on. So a couple of things. I think, on a serious note, I think innovation is an interesting one, because at a business level, we are getting so much questions around innovation. Innovation is not about the shiny at all. It's about how can your business still be around in 5 years' time, because your category, chances are, is more and more disrupted. 50% of a company's revenue in 5 years' time is going to come from a product or service that's not been invented today. It's mad. So innovation at a business level is not a nice to have, it's a fundamental thing. So we're seeing more and more C-level conversation where they're turning to all of us and asking us, actually, how can you help us create that innovation mindset? But it comes with a lot of accountability. It needs to be about, driving the right results. And then from a media and advertising perspective, I think, go back to the point I was saying, I think for me it's really about how do we help experiences cut through. So to do that, you need a couple of things. Again, you need to make sure you're measuring what you're doing, right? So if you want to cut through, it's go back to the attention point. The the measurement is key, because then you can be quite confident in your test. If it doesn't work, that's fine, but if it does work, you can scale. And that starts to give a lot of confidence to your clients, to their partners, to have that culture of innovation, that muscle of innovation that's grounded into data, and you can take a risk, but it's a measured risk, and you can expand it. And the other big thing I've seen a lot is more and more of our kind of brands expect us to work a lot more collaboratively together. If we want to be culture-led in a world of ecosystem, you can't have a PR agency, a media agency, whatever types of specialists all sitting with separate briefs. You kind of need to all get together, and chances are, if you've got a really strong analytics search expert having a really interesting conversation with a creative mind, you might come up with something radically different. So there's a big opportunity for us to radically collaborate together, and this is exactly why I created FUTURElab, is to kind of be more accountable in innovation and start to create that culture of collaboration. And we spend a lot of time with different partners, including you guys, to do that. So 2 good examples for me are, we did a big piece of work with Zalando, again, so big e-commerce fashion brand, who were really innovative in terms of their platform, e-commerce, but how they showed up in comms, not so much. And I think the first thing we had to do is figure out, okay, what does innovation mean for you? What are your barriers? And in order to move to stage 2, we had to create amazing blueprints, proof points that actually when we do something, it really does work. So this is why a great campaign we did with WeTransfer around Dreamscape was a really nice moment around, again, beautiful, creative, the guys really leaned in from a WeTransfer perspective, and then we measured it. And we had to show the business that it worked, we could scale it. And that's really, really important for us. And we did another really good example, I think, with Boucheron. That was quite interesting with you guys. But anyway, that's innovation.
So much more than just the shiny piece of creative at the end for innovation. Yeah. I'm hearing about innovation really starts in that radical collaboration at the beginning, and really in kind of how we work together. I love that. I think we're all excited tomorrow to see Eddie Izzard on stage. Spoiler, Eddie Izzard is calling out bullshit on purpose. So this is something we heard quite a lot in the last few weeks, months on stage, is really about, are we entering this post-purpose era? What does this mean for brands, and how are maybe brands approaching this, and kind of challenging you as an agency, and how they approach farewell and purpose?
Yeah, absolutely fair enough. Big fan of Eddie, so whatever she says, I'll agree furiously. But essentially, a couple of things there. I think the minimum expectation from all of us, because we're all consumers, is brands have to walk the talk. You know, if you haven't got proof points, if you're just saying stuff and you can't substantiate, it's not good enough. We forget how all our consumers are really, really smart marketers in the age of creators, right? They can smell something a bit fake or a bit off, and the backlash is not where you want to be. So that's the first point. We also know the next generation is super choiceful. They will literally pick the brands who they feel are aligning with their values, whatever that may be. So being quite honest about that is really important. Yet they're also addicted to fast fashion to a degree. So there's a paradox in all of us. But ultimately, I'd probably say, if the first person who's answering the purpose question is somebody like me, you're in trouble. Because it shouldn't be marketing, it should be a business question. You should be very clear what you stand for, which charity you want to play for, and once you can do something about it as a business, then marketing is really here to elevate and help create that change.
So what's interesting is it feels like it's sort of becoming much more on the agenda of CMOs. 3 in 4 CMOs now believe that this is a real connection point for them, that what's good for society is good for business. Yeah. And I think this sort of role of the B Corp that's really kind of taking place maybe allows us to have a bit more credibility in that area. What do you think brands should be looking for then in terms of their media partners if they are looking to really play in the responsible planning?
Yeah, definitely. So you said the word B Corp there. I think that's really important. I think there's 2 big things, I think, for me. First of all, can we get collectively, all of us, partners like yourself, agencies, and brands to establish accountability? We want to make sure we're able to measure things. So carbon footprint in media is a big topic of conversation with people like you guys. And the second big thing for me is we're getting to the point where we forget how creative this group of people is. And I'm an optimist by nature. So I think, you know, using that creativity, that force for good is really important. We're partnering a lot with behavioral scientists to figure out when marketing helps you change behavior, can you use that as a force for good? I know you guys are really good at partnering creative communities with We Create. So, you know, doubling down on this kind of stuff is really important. And then Dentsu recently launched at Cannes, DentsueLab, a really nice moment where technology is working hand in hand with creativity to try and make a difference around inclusivity and lots of bigger points. So there is hope, but there's a lot more work we all need to do.
Lots of options to allow you to plan responsibly now, I believe. Okay, I'm getting the nod from over there, so I think our time is up. JG, thank you. We're now entering the age of augmented marketing, perceptive brands, knowing what we need before we knew it, and an increasingly cluttered marketplace. 80% of ads not seen. That means you need to be picking media partners with beautiful spaces and native formats. And the best campaigns that we'll be talking about this year, next year, should I say, in the Mad First stage, or maybe even 10 years' time, will be those that were rooted really in innovation at the creative planning stage and real collaboration. So I love that. Thank you so much. I've so enjoyed that time. Thank you, JJ. Appreciate it.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good Mad Fest.